Good evening, Safe Space family, and welcome to Safe Space. For those of you that have never been to Safe Space before, Safe Space is a podcast or a platform of storytelling, of training for prayer, for sharing information to simply glorify our God, to make anyone know that no matter what situation you're in life, a high or a low, what you are currently doing, what you have done, there is always hope in the Lord. You're never too dirty. You're never too far removed. You've never done too much for our God. He is in the business, which is what his blood, the blood of Jesus Christ, did to clean you up and set you on a solid foundation. Tonight, we are doing a continued conversation that has been very informative to me, eye opening of these Generation Z ladies and young men. They have been ever so kind to come back. And we also have two new additions tonight that's going to impart in us and educate us about who they are, what it is they believe from a young Christian perspective, which is so very important. All of them love God and are in a walk with growing in the Lord, as we will all do until the day we see Him. We will always prayerfully be in a in progress, no matter how old we are. But they have learned and acknowledged Him and are learning Him at an early age, which is so important. And I thank God that they have made that decision. I'm going to start by introducing each of them and allow them. I'm going to hit, they all have very vast, impressive resumes. They're all currently in college, pursuing their prospective careers. So, tonight, in the interest of time, so they have more time to elaborate on the topics that we're going to speak on, I'm going to say a few things about their resumes and allow them to educate you about the things that they'd like for you to know. First, we're going to start with Isaiah Johnston. I'm going to put my glasses on to make sure that I'm reading correctly. Isaiah is in college and has been very passionate. He's 21 years old, an aspiring minister, college student. He is passionate about our bodies due to watching family members suffer with chronic disease, such as heart disease, etc. He has a dream of um, as I said, becoming a physical. I can't remember your major. Say it for me, Isaiah.
Uh,
Your mute is on.
Kinesiology.
Kinesiology, that word always throws me, but I have him to help me with it. He's attending North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. He's very passionate, as I said, about African American chronic disease. Um, Isaiah, tell us a little more about yourself, or if there's something that you're very passionate about that you'd like to share with the audience before we get into the discussion.
I mean, I think that's kind of been it. I'm also a big musician as well. That's what I kind of do in my free time. So I play drums, I play bass, and I'm learning the keys right now. But that was for the bulk of the part.
Okay. Next, we have Naysa Lavette. She's a human resources student at Kennesaw University with a concentration in social work. Naisha is passionate about a number of things, but she's very much so passionate about advocating for mental health and social justice through her leadership roles in nonprofit work and internship experience. Nasa, welcome. Would you like to elaborate?
No, you summed it up. I am a human services major, not a human resources major, though.
You know what? Let's see what I read. Did I read something wrong? Human services? Thank you for
Yeah,
the correction.
amen.
Anything else?
No, ma'am.
Okay. We have Sydnie Brown. She's 21, a nursing student at Kennesaw State University. She is very passionate about community service. Faith is the center of her life. She's also active in her college extracurricular activities. She's currently the president of a Black woman empowerment organization where she helps lead and incentivize, promote empowerment, sisterhood, leadership, and personal growth on campus. Welcome, Sydnie. Would you like to add anything to that? That's your passion that I missed?
No, ma'am, you kind of summed it all up for me, but thank you for having me tonight.
It is my pleasure. Now we have Ariana Hudson. She's dedicated, hardworking individual with passion for learning and helping others. She enjoys taking on new challenges and is constantly seeking opportunity to both grow professionally and personally. She has a strong interest in healthcare and is working toward building a career where she makes meaningful difficult differences in people's lives as a labor and delivery nurse. Welcome, Ariana Hudson.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, darling. If there's anything you'd like to add, because all of you had such extensive resumes, I didn't read them all.
Yeah, so I'm currently a senior pursuing a nursing degree, specifically in labor delivery. I've always had a passion for with children, young children, and as of currently, I work in early education with nanny. So I do want to extend that and develop that into a professional career in a healthcare setting.
That's awesome. And those are two interesting things. But the labor and delivery, of course, is with babies. So it would be great if you could cross those two things in some type of entrepreneurial way. Wouldn't that be
Yes,
great?
I would. Yes.
And definitely, last but not least, your sister, Kaila Hudson, is a fourth year student at Kennesaw University's 5-year architectural program, where she's building a strong foundation in design, problem solving, and the built environment. Along with her studies, she's currently a photometric analyst intern applying technical lighting analyst to support projects while continuing to grow in her industry with experience. She's passionate about human centered design. Kaila is also committed to lifelong learning, creating meaningful spaces, positively impact to positively and impact the people that use them. Welcome, Kaila.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. Is there anything you'd like to add about your passion or the things you do outside of school and working?
I would say like my sister, I do have a heart for children, so I do nanny, and I think it is important the younger generation to also speak life into the even younger generation. So
Mhm.
that would also be something I would add. Yeah.
Well, that's very responsible because so often people of y'all's generation, the impression, I didn't say it was true, is that you guys are selfish and self centered. And I know that is not true of any of you, but I've heard people make blanket statements, which are unfair because nothing is absolute in any person or any generation. So we're going to jump right in with a few things. One of the things that Isaiah brought to my attention in suggesting topics to talk about last time was the identity piece. And he did a very good job about explaining the identity from the way we should see ourselves. So let's start this way. We hear a lot about living your truth, quote unquote. What is the first things that comes to mind when you hear someone making that statement or saying it to you or saying it about you or even saying it about someone else? And then the second part, do you think your generation defines identity differently than previous generations? If so, how? So we'll start with just those two things. Y'all don't all have to jump in at the same time.
I could answer the first one, if I recall the question correctly. Of course, we hear the term living your truth, or can it also better be said, do what makes you happy?
Right.
I was reading the other day in Joshua, or Judges actually, it reminds me of the last verse of Judges, which says, Israel had no king, and they all did what was right in their own eyes. And that is just a rebranding of what was back then, living your own truth, to what it is now. And I think last time I kind of talked about it a little bit. There's a certain sense where everybody has a personal if you want to say, I guess, truth of how their life is,
Mhm.
right? But in a certain sense, we have objective truths, and we have to base our life on that objective truth. That's what the scripture is. And the problem is when we have these subjective truths, is that we start to, say, well, this is wrong and this is right, and become right in our own eyes. And even a bigger problem is now our judgments against other people is actually a judgment against our own, voice. And you have to live your truth, but you don't want the person who's the Christian to live their truth, which means that you can't live your truth. So it becomes very interesting. But I mean, that's kind of the first thing that comes to my mind. We do have objective truths that we're called to live by, and it's good because it's able to govern ourselves. If we didn't have any form of governing body, of course, the governing body that we have in this world is not going to be perfect because we're not perfect. But God is perfect, and He has, His governing laws. Like in Psalm 19, it says, "The law of the Lord is perfect; it revives your soul." And as much as we don't believe that in our lives, it could be hard to do that. There is a good thing in having a sense of objective truth that allows for us to stay the course, and see where there's deviations of morality, deviations of all sorts of things. Because when everybody's just doing what's right in their own eyes, we've seen it, not just in Israel, but in other different nations, it never ends up well.
And it's a trick of the enemy. It's a trick of the enemy to make, like you talked about in Ezra, to make you feel that you're doing right. And it's a fast path to hell. Anyone else?
You know.
Okay, what about the second question? Uh, do you think your generation defines identity differently than previous generations? And let's add a little more to it. What influences your identity? Is it your faith, your family, your friends, or social media? And have you ever struggled with separating who you are from what you do or how others see you? Has that been a struggle for anyone? Like peer pressure that you may say, hang out with someone that you may not, maybe you shouldn't have a relationship with, and you're all out, and you may participate in something that the Holy Spirit inside is telling you, but you do it anyway. So, do you struggle later with separating who you are, how others see you, and what you do, or separating who influences your identity? Is that based on the way you see yourself, your faith, your family, your friends, social media? Because social media can be very intoxicating and encompassing if you don't have the appropriate mindset about it and understand that a lot of what you see is fake. How many people outside of people that are posting things that are negative, so to speak, or I'm not sure what word I'm looking for, but for lack of a better term, that are stirring up stuff. Do you see post the bad days in their life unless they're seeking help? Most people post a glorified life, or a life they're trying to create, or they want people to believe. I saw a lady one time had no clothes. She would go into high-end stores and dress up and take the pictures in the dressing rooms and then edit them and post them. So people thought she was very well dressed, and it wasn't true. So how would you guys comment on that? Go, Sydney.
I would say that based off what you were saying just now about how people like to post, not necessarily the bad days, but their glorified life. I feel like in our generation, we see that and we run with it. We think that when people post most of the time, we think they have this awesome life. And I'm not saying that it's not awesome, but we tend to cling to that idea that we have to be perfect and we have to have all of this stuff in the right order. But in this generation, it's going to take time. I know me personally, in the past, I've struggled with like peer pressure a little bit just because I was like a people pleaser, and I kind of
Mhm.
still am sometimes, but I've been working on it. But I would definitely say that you have to keep the right company. So when you're around people who aren't doing the things that you should be doing, or you're in bad environments, then it's going to reflect on you in your life.
So you would say at some points in your life, your friends or social media influenced your identity more so than your faith and your family.
I feel like at one point it has in high school. I will say
But
that
you're
it
aware
has.
of it.
Yeah, and I am. So I've definitely like gotten better with that and trying to keep God at the center now and trying to find my identity within Christ and not within more so, I guess, people.
So, being that you're focusing on Christ being the center of your life, do you ever feel that your Christian beliefs put you at odds with mainstream culture or things that you would rather be doing at this point in your life?
I feel like it has been a struggle at some point. Definitely like, going to church and doing things that I know the things that I'm not supposed to be doing, like when the church has taught me to certain things, or even reading the Bible that I'm not supposed to be doing. It has been a struggle with like being outside and around, like in the real world around other people. I definitely say that was a struggle, but now I've definitely gotten better. And I think it's just keeping God at the center has truly helped me with that.
So you've gotten strengthened in that. Naysa, I see you
Yes,
have
ma'am.
your microphone open. And to continue Sydnie's conversation, are there moments when you feel pressure to stay silent about your faith?
Well, I want to go back to your first question too about
Okay.
how I feel like the differences in identity and generations. We have
Uh-huh.
people identifying as dogs, identifying as we, they, them. So identity is definitely different today than it was back then. Um, but to speak to like myself, I kind of have an identity crisis almost every other day. It's hard growing up in the digital age.
Mhm.
And I've always been different my entire life. I've never listened to rap music. I've always liked old school music or
You do
gospel
have an
music.
old soul in some ways.
Yeah, and
Come
sometimes
on, CC Winans.
you know the vibes. But sometimes I feel misplaced when it comes to people my age. And I kind of struggle with that, like not being too much of not myself, but not being myself in a sense. There was also something else I wanted to say. What did you say, Sid? Yeah, but just
She talked
definitely
about people pleasing. She talked about being more focused and working on her relationship with God, and that being the case. So once she becomes aware of what's wrong by being at church and reading her
yeah.
Bible, she's held accountable for it. So she struggles sometimes with wanting to do what she knows she shouldn't do.
I don't think I struggle in the area of not wanting to be viewed as a Christian. I love the Lord with all my heart, and with all my heart, I love the Lord. So if you don't like it, you don't like it. If you love it, I'm glad you love it. We in there, we locked in, we together. So I've never really struggled in that area. But I will say, even when it comes to dating, um,
Relationships was going to be my next area.
Sheesh.
Is it difficult to maintain Christian values in friendships, dating,
yeah,
school, and work?
yeah, it's
Have
hard.
you ever felt isolated because of your faith?
Yeah.
How important is Christian community in helping you staying grounded? Come on, Kaila.
Oh
Because
yeah,
we
I'll
trying to
jump
figure
in.
out how we single and isolated, Father, we are serving you with all our hearts.
Yeah,
But
that's
then
been
the
a
men that come to us is 45 and run over. And I don't want that.
How old?
45 and run over.
45.
Yeah. Or they be 20 and they got bifocals. And God, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with a bifocal, Lord. But that's not what I want. That's not my ministry. Okay? Okay.
Go ahead, Kaila.
I was gonna say yes, it can feel very isolating at times, but I mean, I think back to when like we're supposed to be set apart.
Yes.
So I think it's constantly just reminding yourself of that. And then as it goes for like social media and just what we're seeing going on in the world, I think it all comes down to like community and being in real life. You know what I'm saying? With real people and having like real conversations. Um, do we still get caught up in those things? Yes, but I think having those two like reminders at the center of my head that when you're supposed to be set apart, you're not supposed to be like the rest. And understanding that the Lord will place those around me that are supposed to be around me. You know what I'm saying? Even if who we are and our identity is deemed boring or deemed too strict or whatever, might be the case for I guess young Christians. So just, I feel like keeping yourself surrounded with actual community and then just remembering you're supposed to be set apart. So that's what I would say.
But that's good because you know the scriptures and you can use them in your studies to encourage yourselves when you have these moments that are hard, because we will have challenging moments, and it's crucial to be able to encourage yourself. Okay, what about this? My identity in Christ means,
For me,
Well,
in light of who he is, who am I? That's Kayla and I went to a service and they were kind of talking about your identity. And one thing he said was, in light of who he is, who am I? So if he's the light, then and we carry it, then who are you? So I think that sums up my identity.
you were about to say something, Isaiah?
oh, you like halfway finished your sentence. I didn't know if you wanted us to respond, so I guess I will. You said, in my identity in Christ is kind of what Naysa had already said. Um, Getting a big picture, not just what we comprehend, but what the scriptures tell of what God, and then understanding Him and myself in light of Him is very important, and it's very humbling. It's very humbling. Because earlier, I think pre-show, we was talking about, selfishness and whatnot. Not everybody is, outwardly selfish, but in our hearts, God is always, taking the scalpel and, cutting our hearts.
Right.
And there's probably a little bit of some of that in there. And scripture even tells us, Paul tells us not to think yourself more highly than you ought to think. And that's not just for, what we're doing outside, in the world, but that's also in the church. We don't want to, get so caught up with being the evangelist, the pastor, the preacher, all the things that we fill ourselves up and think of ourselves more highly than we ought to think, and completely forget this is all about Jesus. This is all about Him. So I think I 100% agree with Naysa in that, we have to understand who God is, and then we have to understand who we are in light of Him, and then His grace and His mercy that keeps us even when we feel like falling away, but yet He still allows for it. I think Jude says, now to Him who is able to keep you from falling, which is so important. So yeah, I would, back up what Naysa said.
If you could encourage another young Christian in one sentence, what would you say?
God is graceful and He's merciful. That's what it comes down to.
Yes. We are created in His image. I think it's in Genesis. Um, Christ lives in us. If I'm remembering correctly, it's Galatians, but all of those things are so true. Okay, we're going to switch gears just a little bit. You all are in college, working, building yourself as young adults to move into your full-fledged adult lives at some point, sooner rather than later, because you're all toward the end of your college careers. Um, you're facing a number of things in the world that we all have faced in previous generations, but it's a bit different. Um, is home ownership still a part of your dream? And what does financial milestones, do they seem as attainable as maybe they were in past generations? Does the rising cost of living concern you? How does your faith influence your financial decisions?
I'll start out. I feel like being in my early 20s thus far, this has been one of the most uncomfortable, awkward seasons of life, like financially, because I know all of us, like, we're still in school, still expected to work. I can't work for the job that I truly want without the degree. So then I'm juggling like three things at once, halfway still dependent on my parents, halfway foot like still out trying to like really step into full-fledged adulthood. So it's been very uncomfortable for me. Very like, Lord, what in the world is going on? What is this? I don't like this. And I know that I'm only in the baby steps of adulthood. So I'm trying, and I think also too, like with the social media part comes in the mind of like, oh, I feel like I should be much farther than I am as it comes like financially and just like with an education and wanting to travel and just wanting to do so many things, but feeling at the same time like you can't really do it all. You got to focus on one thing at a time. So I would say for the most part, it's been a very uncomfortable and awkward season thus far with all that.
So does anyone else want to address that question?
Um, kind of piggyback onto that. I was put in a situation where I had to kind of figure out things in a financial standpoint very early on. So when I started my freshman year of college, I had all these financial responsibilities piled onto me very fast. However, I am very grateful because I do have an influential figure to in my life that has helped me, process that and kind of guide my way through things. However, I know that some people do not have that. And so I am very fortunate to be in the place where I am, where I can still, pay all my bills, have like a little bit of saving money. But I will say it is still hard being a full-time student and having a full-time job.
And like she said, to add on to that, I think like she said, the influential figure, I would say our father. Like I feel like we have sort of kind of a step up in that just because of what he knows and what he's been able to teach us. So I think I could only imagine for those that maybe don't have
The resources.
the resources, like
Or
mentors.
someone that's financially savvy?
Yeah, like just how much more of a struggle it is because we're already struggling with the guidance. So I can only imagine without the guidance how that is for young people. So yeah.
Anyone else?
It's hard out here in these streets.
Believe it or not, that's going to lead to my next question because it's hard for much older people too.
Yeah.
The amount of money that it takes to live a quote unquote comfortable life compared to I would venture to say any other time in the history of this country is astronomical. I remember when I was you all's age to acquire or to earn six figures put you on easy street. That is not the case anymore. Depending on the level of responsibility that you have. If you have a family of four, we don't need to talk about if you decided to have four children on top of you and your spouse or five children. Six figures is not it's a nice life. It's an okay life. You can take a vacation if you manage well, if you uh, but if the children are stacked together with college and maybe you have no inheritance to help you, a lot of things come into play. Six figures does not do what it did when I was in my 20s. And I did some research earlier this week, and I was also watching Good Morning America one morning. I'm going to ask you guys what you feel about this. Is home ownership is still part of the American dream? Is it a financial milestone that you think you can attain? Because a number of 30-year-olds, because in this climate right now, home prices are high as well as interest rates. Well, traditionally, because I've worked in the real estate industry at one point for about 6 years, if the interest rate went up, the home prices would go down. And so it would kind of flip flop to make homes affordable, give you some level of affordability. At least when you reached your 30s, that you would have a fair shake if you'd gone to school, done quote unquote what you're supposed to do, obtained a trade, whatever, to earn you a living to buy a home. A number of 30 plus year olds that are in quote unquote impressive careers are moving back home to save money so they can have this monstrous down payment to get into a home because they kind of fall in a bracket of making what used to be considered a good living. So they can't qualify for down payment assistance and a number of things that people that make less than them could, but they don't have enough money to buy a home to put the down payment to make it affordable to live month to month. And the last thing in the world you need to do is overextend yourself and become house poor. So what do you guys think about the housing situation, the rise in cost of living? Does it discourage you? And how does it affect, how does your faith influence how do you make financial decisions? What do you think about that?
Home ownership is still the goal, of course. But the way it's looking, it is a little discouraging because it's like, and also like Kaila said, we're in a digital age. So I'm seeing 20-year-olds buy a house. I'm like, dang,
Where's
I
mine?
got $5. What that's gonna give me? Can I give you the 5 in exchange for the 5 bedroom? Like, how does that work? But even all of us, we live in apartments. Our rent is
A
expensive.
mortgage,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or what used to be a mortgage.
And even the access to housing now under the administration that we're under, it's crazy. Like, not that Section 8 was easier to get on back then, but it's definitely much easier to get on than it is now. You have people that are really living below the poverty line that fill out applications and they're on a wait list for 20 years. What are they supposed to do in that 20-year time frame? So it's crazy, especially in the economy that we're in and the administration that we're under.
That brings me to my next topic. Did anyone else want to elaborate on that? Because it kind of, what she said is going to take me into my next topic, faith in this political climate. Um, and you hit on something, whereas the homeless population I have watched explode over the last decade. Any city that I've traveled to in America, it is, even the ones that I have frequented before, it is a much larger issue. Even the one we live in. When you go downtown Atlanta, my office is downtown Atlanta. I have never seen, and I've been in and out of that building for 30 years, I have never seen the amount of homelessness and tying into anxiety and mental health uh, treatment and the availability of it and the long-term care for people. Some people cannot medicate and be expected to live on their own. They just can't. They need long-term care. What do you all think about that? Um, and even the current political climate in race, justice, unity. What challenges do you see as young Christians discussing race and justice in the country, and how the church model is should play a part or shouldn't, or what do you see them doing in a number of things that has been undone that was fought for people of our race in the 60s when I was an infant or born. I was born in the late 60s, but the 1965 Voter Rights Act has been gutted by the Supreme Court that allows this gerrymandering to go on and the redistricting to happen. So people that looks like us will not have the representation. We never had a lot that we have once had in our United States Congress. So all of that, the mental illness, the cost of the affordability, the climate that we live in, the profiling. What are your thoughts on that?
As someone a part of the field, this is my favorite topic to talk about
Come on.
because America's president, right? The number one problem that he has is his policy and reform is built on money grabs. It's a power grab and it's a money grab, but it's not at any shape, way, form, or fashion about the people. Black people, white people, Mexican people. It's about no person at all, no individual besides himself. So that makes it
Question though,
hard.
before you finish,
Mhm.
would you agree that it is about the top 1 to 3%
Oh,
financially?
absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Um, he his policies are are gutting health and human services fields. We've been told that we are no longer considered professionals. So we're just getting degrees and doing whatever dilly-dallying in this field. And then to speak to the homelessness piece, a lot of times we target nonprofits, charities, and organizations and being mad at them for not being able to help out, but they're getting cut in funding. They're getting cut in resources. They have nothing to give. Most of their employees are not even being paid from the top to the bottom, all because of what Mr. America is doing. So I think it's important to address the issue there. And for us, our age, our generation, like you mentioned, the Voting Rights Act, I feel like we're too lackadaisical when it comes to things like that. We're too silent. We don't want to open up our mouths and speak about things considering voting or politics. Oh, I can't talk politics. It's going to make somebody mad, make them upset, piss them off, because it pertains to your livelihood. It pertains to your rights. And we don't deem it as important because we weren't the ones on the front lines fighting for it. So it's more common for us to be quiet and silent and scared to say things amongst our peers. But it's very important that we talk about what is going on, because to see something and to not say anything is to be compliant to what's going on.
That's correct. I agree with you in the aspects of that. I think our forefathers from slavery definitely throughout the 60s and civil rights, the sacrifices they made have made us extremely comfortable and complicit. Even though we face the profiling and all of the unfair things that we've seen up until this point, if we are not vigilant, minimally at the polls in November, we're going to see some things that we haven't seen prior to when I was born in the 60s that I've never experienced. People have lived so comfortably, whether they were able to get Section 8 or whether they were able to go to college and become a millionaire or obtain that middle class six-figure life, until I don't really believe they believe that things can get as bad as they could. And I spoke to a 38-year-old man that was performing a service at my house, and way too many people, and he's a millennial, are of this mindset. He said, Miss Shelby, my wife and I didn't vote. I said, why? He's like, why? You see that we were suspicious of the cheating. I said, but what if slaves had felt that way? What if the people that were hosed down in the 60s had felt that way? They had a whole huge reason to believe that what they were doing would never benefit us because they were up against so much more than we've been up against. So if they can fight and die to go to the polls, how could you not?
The common trend today is to not say anything and to not do anything. A lot of people play into the powerlessness feeling. Even when it comes to things on the local aspect, a lot of people, but it all starts with education, not educating our young people, not educating our old people, not educating anybody. The education on rights, reformation, policy, politics, there is no form of education. And even locally, a lot of people don't know. Go to the Capitol. You have the right to go to the Capitol and challenge the people that work in the Capitol. They work for you.
For you.
It's not the other way around. You go tell
People
them what
don't
you want to be done,
understand.
and you
They don't
don't
understand.
leave just because you've been told no. I was
That's
told
right.
that no means a new opportunity, so try again.
That's awesome.
We don't stand up for what's really right. We back down too easily.
I agree.
I would definitely agree with Naysa in the aspect of like, I think the lackadaisical sort of attitude that young people have and just like kind of like riding in limbo literally comes from being uneducated about it, like
Correct.
not knowing what is even happening. So it's like, okay, where do we expect to learn these things? Certainly not schools, because schools are being affected by this administration. Um, so I think like the question is, where do we teach these young people? Like, where do we curate an environment for young people to effectively learn about this? I don't know if it would be like churches, or
I was
I
about
don't know,
to
but I
ask you
think
that. You
that
took the
that is
words out of my
really
mouth.
the issue. And I think, I mean, even getting on the topic, like young people having babies and just a a knowledge of what's going on is not happening, and there's a big disconnect about it. And then like the empathy that we could hold towards like our ancestors, there isn't any, because it's hard to resonate with things that you haven't been through. So I think, like, again, educating on that, reiterating like what we're going through, what our ancestors went through, and like we're fighting for, and like how this is literally going to affect us. I know, I think about, goodness gracious, my children. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I think about like my children, and the state of like what they're going to have to endure with the craziness that's going on in the world. So, but I know I've had been blessed to have the opportunity to like be educated on these things, have these conversations with my grandparents, my parents. Um, so yeah.
But it's been a breakdown, I think, Kayla, from a number of probably three generations that we have not as a people
Mhm.
educated our children well about where we come from.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, everybody knows about slavery, but do you know if they had the will to fight with the way they were living with no promise of anything changing? Living in the conditions that they were living, we don't have a choice. But I personally believe, and I want you guys to elaborate on this, that integration cost us a lot. It gave us a level of, it did two things in my eyes, looking at being born in the late 70s, late 60s. The integration cost the education of knowing what our people went through, what we fought for, and what we were experiencing as a blessing of their fight. Secondly, we became big time consumers. We sold because of integration. Streets like Auburn Avenue, Black Wall Street, whereas we provided everything for ourselves, from banking to shoe shops to whatever, because we were not welcome anywhere else. We sold those businesses to foreigners, to people, immigrants that have come into this country and bought businesses in our neighborhoods. We are the great consumers. That's why we're able to do boycotts now and wield our dollars to have such a great impact, because we literally are making other communities wealthy from us. And because we have been able to live and experience certain freedoms that we did not in the past, it's given us a false sense of security. And we find ourselves here being ignorant about what it is that we need to know, and even understanding how important the vote is. I heard Michelle Obama say that we would have had a greater chance in the last election if we'd had greater voter turnout, as well as even the one with Joe Biden, that he did win. Our voter turnout is traditionally very low, and that's a problem. That's a problem. So, question, someone, Kayla, you mentioned the church. In the past, the church played an intricate role during slavery because they had the trust of the people in authority, and many of them had the Underground Railroad running right under their feet. And they didn't know it, but because they gave a reverence and a trust to pastors and churches. I recently had the ability to attend the Operation Push convention in Chicago last June. And one of the things that they spoke about was the role of the church in getting back to ground roots education and rallying our people to do things differently than we have gotten comfortable in doing, to get us back to the front lines, to register voters. One of the things that they were doing at Operation Push was expunging people's records with the help of Judge Mathis and another judge that was there to get them registered to vote, and teaching them the importance of what we're up against right now. What are you all's thoughts on that?
Mm. I was at a church this previous Sunday, and it was interesting because I feel like maybe nowadays a lot of churches might stray away from politics, just when,
Mhm.
let this be about loving the Lord. And which I agree about that, but also too, like, loving the Lord means loving his people. And it's like, how can we just sit back and not talk about, like you said, like the importance of voting and like mentioning they can be controversial. It can be, oh, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I don't want to offend, but I mean, the Lord offended in the Bible. So, you know what I'm saying? Like I think it's a matter of just making people uncomfortable. I mean,
Well, we're getting to past the parties now. We're getting into a time that if we're not careful, we're going to lose some rights that we've had since the 60s. I mean, it's just that plain. And a lot of it is being done quietly, and people are not aware. God was with the slaves, but they were still slaves. The first slaves were brought to these shores in 1619.
I think a
We didn't
lot of
get a
people
Voting Rights Act until 1965.
don't recognize the severity of the times in which we're in. It's like you said, it's no longer about parties. It's about rights. It's literally about your rights being on the line. The rights that your forefathers fought for are literally on the line. So when it comes to church and community organizing is real important. When it comes to the churches in the Black community, church is important. So why are we not speaking about politics in the church? And a lot of churches don't, because a lot of people don't know. Most churches are nonprofits, which are funded as a 501c3.
Right.
Under a
That's
501c3 code, you technically can't endorse political parties. So a lot of churches stray away from doing that unless they're a 501c4. If you're a 501c4, you have the right to endorse. But
But we don't have to
I'm not
endorse.
saying, yeah, I
We
was about to
need
say,
to
you don't have to
educate.
endorse,
That's
but you
right.
need to bring about the importance of voting. Our pastor, he gonna get up there and let you know, go
Go
register to
vote.
vote. He may
Go
bring
and
in
go
a few
vote.
people. He's not endorsing those people, but I'm making you aware this person is voting for this position. I'm gonna let them speak their piece. I'm not endorsing them, but this is important. So I think if a lot of churches or just community spaces in general moved with that mindset,
That
we
was the
probably
beginning of
have
Barack
a bigger.
Obama's career. He was a community organizer on the south side of Chicago. What about this, guys? What advice would you give to your parents, pastor, older Christians about understanding Gen Z?
Meet us where we're at.
Isaiah, you've been quiet tonight. Open that mic.
What you mean? I spoke first.
Speak now. What advice would you give to your parents, pastors, friend, well, older people, aunts, uncles, older Christians about understanding your generation?
Oh, I mean, I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about last time of being real. I think I'm just gonna stick and stay on that. One thing I was thinking of a couple of days ago, maybe it might have been last week or a couple weeks ago, I'm not sure. Naysa said we getting old now, so you forget stuff. Yeah, but I would say being real. And I'm talking about the whole thing. Don't just be real up to a certain point, and then you're not trying to show this area. No, like even this last past week, I didn't even know God had just showed me that I had some anger in my heart that I didn't even know was there. But in that exposure, it allows me to be honest with myself. And I think just, having real conversations with older adults, it allows for it to be relatable as we talked about last time. Because today they can say how, I was going through the exact same thing that you was going through when you was your age, or maybe older. So that would
But they
be,
don't have AI. They didn't have this. They didn't have technology. They didn't have. So, yes, there's nothing new under the sun, but it is different for you all. There are things that you all are facing right now that I did not face. And I'm very cognizant of that. And to some older people are not open to understanding because they have closed minds. They just think you're 21, I was 21. There's nothing new under the sun, you know. Okay, Ari, go ahead.
Yes, I want to piggyback on that. One of the things I would say is try to understand where we're coming from. And speaking from experience of being able to work with a lot of families over the years, Older generations, I've learned, are very stuck in their ways of how they were raised. And when and when you're coming, and I've learned, and I noticed that when I'm coming to older generations with like certain experience that I have, they always try to say, well, back in my day, we did da 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 da. It wasn't as hard as you for it was back then. However, it's hard to me because I've never experienced it before, and it's very different than what it is back then. And trying to merge that gap to where they can bring some of their experiences without downplaying mine is
Is that
where
how you feel? Is that how
it
you
is.
feel? You
It
feel
is.
downplayed when they try to make like it's no big deal because they're hindsight. That's how you feel.
Mm-hmm. And so I find that very difficult. And that's one of the things that I'm working on as I'm caring for, the younger babies. They have big feelings, like they have a lot of emotions that they're trying to work through. And I'm trying to learn to validate them because, this is all new to them as well. So.
And
So let
to
me ask you this, Ari, or Sydney, both of you seem to, everybody was shaking their head. When someone makes you feel that way, or they minimize your trauma or
Mm.
your stress, may not even be trauma, your stress or concern about a situation, does it make you want to shut down?
Yes.
Or at least not go to that person anymore.
Mhm.
Like that's what our generation, like Ariana was saying, we're more in tune with our feelings. I'm not gonna say we're more emotional, but we're more aware of our feelings, and we feel like we can talk about it. But I feel like when we want to talk to, like, for example, our parents or like our grandma or something like that, when they be like, "Oh, I went through that back in the day," but the thing is, like you said, Auntie Shelby, like the situations, we have different experiences, so it's not gonna be the same how you went through it a few years ago compared
A
to how
lot of years
we're gonna
ago,
go through it. You know what I'm saying? It's
I
not gonna
do.
be the same thing. Like, for example, me and my mom, like when I was in high school, I feel like we would bump heads a lot, or because we wouldn't see eye to eye. Or I feel how I'm feeling and she wouldn't get it, and she would say how she's feeling and I wasn't getting it. But I feel like now we have a safe space. We have like a code word to where if I be like, oh, red, like we can talk and I can talk to her and she's trying to sit down and understand. So I feel like this generation, we feel like how Ari said, we might feel like we're downplayed or our feelings could be downplayed, like it's not that serious. I feel like if we felt like our feelings were more validated, then we would be more open and more
Ben.
open minded to go to somebody in a different generation.
The question, when you come to someone
Mm-hmm.
about a hard topic, you know, about how you're feeling overstimulated or whatever it may be, do you want them to be honest in love, or do you want them to not disclose all aspects of what they're thinking or what could be or could not be? What is it that you want? What are you saying, Kaila?
I've literally had to tell my mom sometimes because I'll call her, that's my girl. And I have to say, Mom, sometimes I don't want you to tell me that, your father and I have been through that before, and this is nothing new. I've literally had to tell her sometimes. Sometimes when I call you, I just want to speak. I just want to get, the first 30 minutes of the phone call, I just want to get it off my chest. I just want to cry. I'm not really here for the, do this, do that. But then I also know that there is wisdom from where they're coming from. But that first part, just let me get it out. And then
So
we can.
sometimes you don't want advice. You just
Yeah,
want
I have to tell
to
her.
listen.
Sometimes I go, this is not an advice call. This is I'm getting it out call. So,
I disagree with
Gotcha.
yeah.
Now I'm going to say this because your mom is an ex too, and I don't have biological children, but I love you all. And if one of you called me, it would be a huge struggle. I'm trying to learn. But, and I remember this from my mother, and I did not understand it. So you guys will understand and feel this way. When you love someone and they're younger and you see them about to walk off of the balcony, you say, turn to the left, because if you walk two steps farther, you're going to fall off the balcony. But sometimes I'm learning, even with hearing what you guys are saying here, We have to let you walk off the balcony because not everyone learns through hearing.
Yeah.
Some people learn through walking off the balcony. Is that correct? Am I perceiving the right thing?
100%.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. But there's kind of a difference between that style of advice giving and loving versus someone who leads in love through trauma. Because a lot of,
What
I
does that
know,
mean? Help me with that.
a lot of parents parent through trauma. They don't parent through love, and it's not intentional.
They're
It's
doing the best they
because
can.
it's because that's what they know. Well,
Right.
I know that that was done to me, so I'm going to do that to you, not because I don't love you, not because I don't care about you, but simply because that's what I know. So I was taught to say, shut up because I told you so. So you finna shut up because I told you so.
You know, that's amazing that people my age are talking about that. They call them shadows. I'm in a group that one of the women that lead the group talks about shadows, which are traumas, paradigms, whatever you want to call them. And one of the things she said that was most harmful for her and made her shrink in environments when she should have stood up tall because she was a high achiever, she brought a lot to the table, was you're seen and not heard. That was a quote my mom would tell me. I don't know if you guys heard that, but in my generation, and she's about 2 years older than I, it was very common. She said, but that caused her issues because in the professional environment, if she was not received or tried to be pushed down or her ideas were being stole, she did not know initially how and when to advocate for herself, which created more shadows or more traumas in her. So I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Just a few more questions and we're going to wrap up on time, guys. The biggest fear about your future.
I feel like not having it, I'm not going to say not having it all, but not succeeding, I guess. I feel like with my mom, for example, she's a nurse, right? And she told me like how she went through school and it was hard and it was this and that. And I feel like one of my fears is like going to like being in college, starting the nursing program, and it being a lot, which I know I can do it, but I feel like one of my fears is just like thinking it's too much or being like, can I truly handle this and not succeeding?
That's one of your biggest fears right now. Anyone else?
I'll say not being happy. And if I put in all this work and I'll turn out to be not happy. No, I'm just like, but I often watch people our age. We get so excited about our future, so passionate about things. And then the climate in which we're in is hard, is trying. Our feelings are minimized. We struggling financially. We're struggling with school. Losing my happiness out of, chasing something that's supposed to be this big, I don't want to do that. I want to maintain my happiness in the midst of chasing my dreams. And if I don't get what my dreams, I still want to remain happy and at peace.
So what you're saying is that the joy of the Lord is your strength and
Absolutely.
that you don't want to live in a way that's circumstantial because the life that you're seeking and that you will live will have mountaintops and valleys. You'll have flows and ebbs. Even if you get the exact career you want, the exact husband you want, the exact 1.5 child you want, there will be moments
Yeah, no way.
that you will not be happy, but joy, if you connect it to divine, is
Mhm.
consistent because it's not circumstantial. Now I know you didn't ask me for that advice, but I thought I'd give you just that little bit.
I appreciate your advice, Queen.
Biggest hope. What are you all's biggest hope?
Jesus.
What do you say, Isaiah?
Keep it simple, Jesus. That's about
He's the
it.
beginning and end of everything. That's for sure the truth. Anyone else?
I think honestly, my biggest hope would be, I don't want to say make my parents proud, but I think the older you get and the more insight you get into like the way your parents operate and like their mind and things like that, I think just kind of seeing everything that they provided for my siblings and I think to be able to give that back to them in a way
To
would be
make them smile.
Yeah. So not proud, but like smile and make them feel like I did a good job.
It was all worth it.
It was all worth it. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'd say to leave a lasting legacy.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys again, and this was very informative. And we got a chance to talk about various topics. I think the last time we got stuck kind of between identity and AI and all of that. This, in my opinion, episode gave a a peek into a number of topics and how you all think and what you feel about them. So it gives me a broader view of how you think. What do you wish older generations understood about Generation Z? And this is the last one. And the one word that you would like your generation to be described as from your perspective. And we're going to wind this up.
I'd say innovative.
Innovative?
Yeah, I
From
think so.
what perspective?
I think sometimes we get deemed as lazy, but I think that comes from a space of not tolerating mess a lot of the times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can look at my homegirl here, Naysa. I think she's quite innovative. Like when something doesn't work, she's on to the next thing. And that, I mean, that can be not so helpful in times, but I feel like overall that was the first thing that came to my mind. Like, and I think like that's how the Lord is in like I would say my life, like it's always worked out. Like there's no reason to stress. Like he has me, like literally anytime with anything, any situation. So the Lord is innovative and yeah, that's what I would say.
The word I would describe our generation, I would say multifaceted.
Mhm.
We have very many layers to us, and we're
Lean over a little bit, Ari. I want to see your beautiful face. There we go.
we have many layers to us that we're trying to peel away to, see what it is about ourselves, like who we could be. And, part of that is being influenced by older generations, but we're also the generation that integrated technology. So we also have that aspect of how we were raised and how we were influenced. And, when technology has allowed us to see different parts of the world and different cultures. And I think that's also how, like, another aspect of, like, what's what I'm trying to say, of how we're influenced, I would say. So I would say we're very multifaceted.
I would agree. And I admire the fact that you all don't tolerate in disingenuousness. If you're disingenuine, you guys are like, I'll see you later. And I remember being your age, I could spot it, but I would be polite. Now I probably would exit, and I like the fact that you don't. You just don't do it. So what's your word, Sydnie?
Oof. I don't really know. I feel like they said some really good ones.
Okay. Naysa, you already said yours, right? Did you say yours? What's your word?
I'll say activist.
You are. I wish all of your generation was an activist like you, because you were born in the '60s and you were marching with
You know what I'm
Martin.
saying? I was marching with Martin,
You
and
was
I was a
I know,
left-hander. And
I
I was
know,
fighting with Malcolm too. I was on both
I know.
sides. Mm-hmm.
I wish, because we need you today. So what's your word, Isaiah?
I don't even got one.
You don't have one?
No, not right
Okay,
now.
all right.
Put me on the hot seat.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said you put me on the hot seat.
I
Can't
did.
think right now.
Okay. Okay. Well, again, I think this conversation was very informative. I again learned more on a larger scope of how you all think and how you see things. Of course, it varies from personality to personality, but still there was a lot of consistency in the way you felt about certain topics. I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for taking your time in your busy schedules. I know you work, I know you go to school, and I know it's a stretch, but I appreciate your ability and willingness, I should say, to educate us, the world, of who you are and how you think. May God continue to bless you all, guide you all. And I know that there are wonderful things that He has in store for you, in spite of all that we discussed tonight, because we know that He has the final say. And you're dedicated to Him. He's going to order your footsteps. And again, thank you for coming by Safe Space. Audience, if for whatever the reason, you'd like to reach out to some of these young people for, I don't know, who knows? My website is safespacewithshelby.com. You can reach out to them that way, and I will make sure if they're open to communicating that they will get the information. Again, thank you all for coming by Safe Space. Thank you, audience. This is Shelby from Safe Space. You all have a good night.